Let me tell you about the Sleep With Me podcast. If you struggle to get a good night's sleep like me, I need you to check out this podcast. Each episode is crafted to help you unwind, featuring gentle storytelling designed to ease your mind and guide you into restful slumber. I kid you not, whenever I'm anxious in bed at night, I turn it on, and before I know it, it's morning, and I'm as refreshed as I've ever been. I am not sure how it works, but trust me when I tell you, it does. So, join me and thousands of others who have turned restless nights into peaceful sleep with the help of the Sleep With Me podcast. Go Global is a free-flowing technology company that handcrafts, embellishes, and manufactures garments and accessories. Designed on the principles of people, places, and possibilities, Go Global reimagines fashion and is inspired by you, the people of the world. Hello again, beautiful people. Welcome back to yet another episode on the Make Mental podcast. Every time I get to do this repetitive intro, I feel more blessed and blessed. But it never stops, right? Just like your mental health, we aren't going to stop over here at the podcast. We're going to try and up our game so you can up yours. And that's exactly what we're doing today with the guest we have on, Alec Puckett from the University of Tulsa. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Make Mental
Thanks for
podcast.
the invite. Thanks for having me. Thankful to be here.
Yeah, so I don't steal your thunder or take your own elevator pitch here. Can you tell us what you do, who you are, and why you are such a valuable guest to this platform?
Yeah, I am a certified athletic trainer, like you mentioned, at the University of Tulsa. I primarily work with softball and volleyball, so kind of like my fall and spring assignments. And I'm very, very passionate about student athlete mental health. I have been since I started grad school and decided to dive headfirst into the athletic training field. So I think that's why I'm here. I found your platform through social media, and I think we connected that way through a couple of Instagram posts. And here we are. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, well, we appreciate your time. I know such a busy schedule, especially at the time of recording this near finals week for a bunch of athletes when they're trying to cram and study for their tests, but also not let their athletic performance decline can be tricky for sure, on top of regular life pressures. If we could start out the episode with maybe a 3-point checklist of 3 things that any athlete right now that's listening to this, even if it's after finals week, they're struggling with school, they're struggling with personal life, they're struggling in sports. What are 3 things they can do to kind of reset their mind and their body so they can then perform better?
Ooh, 3 things. I would say the first thing that you can do, and I think this goes for anybody listening to this episode, not just athletes in specific, but get some sleep. Sleep is probably one of the most important things that I'll preach to my kiddos and to my coworkers and to my family and friends and everybody. Sleep is one of the most important components just to living a healthy and happy lifestyle. So I would say that one. Don't forget to eat and drink some water, especially for you student athletes out there. I know you're always cramming. I mean, even myself here, I'm drinking Starbucks and you guys are drinking energy drinks and probably way too much than you should have, especially my athletes that are listening to this episode. So drink some water. Don't forget to eat your food. The nights can get long. They can get frustrating. So eat your food, drink your water, get some sleep. And I would say just move around a little bit, whether it's going for a walk, getting outside, going to the gym, going to see your athletic trainer, get your rehab, get your treatment in, just take care of your bodies and your minds. And I think that's probably my top 3.
Yeah, I love it. And I couldn't help but laugh because before this episode, we were chatting and continuing our connection. I was saying I didn't even eat lunch today. So I'm working on it myself, right? Just because we're on here saying do this, do that, doesn't mean we don't struggle with it ourselves. It just means maybe we have a smidge more experience in the struggle.
Exactly.
So
I
if
always
we
tell
can
my
help lighten
athletes,
your load.
do as I say, not as I do. That's what I always preach to my
Well,
kids.
sometimes
Yeah.
I'm sure you lead by example more than you'd like to let on, and your athletes can tell you. But my follow-up question to those 3 points are, what's the balance when you're studying between, okay, I need to stay up from midnight to 1 o'clock to study, or that one extra hour of sleep is so much more beneficial. Is there a balance there? Is it something you have to learn as you go, or I mean, do you have experience in that? Have you
I
done?
mean, I would say for me, especially when I was in grad school, just because that was the most recent level of schooling that I finished. For me, I think as you get on, I mean, I've did with COVID about 6.5, 7-ish years of college. So it's just something that you obviously learn as you go, and you learn that healthy balance. But I think you also have to come with the realization of yourself. If you're cramming for a final the night before and you haven't been to class or you haven't been studying as much as you should have, that you probably can just go to sleep, and the extra sleep will help you more than staying up and studying for stuff that you might not know to begin with. So it's just kind of like a toss of a coin, really. If you feel confident enough, or you feel like you're not going to learn it overnight, then I would say just get that sleep. I think that's a one way that you could do it.
Yeah, I like that advice. Is there a way to put that in athlete terms? Take it out of the student mode and student athlete, put it in athletes, perhaps. The first
Oh,
thing for me that comes to mind is running, right? Fitness.
mhm.
Everyone knows it's something that needs to be done. Studying, everyone knows it's something that needs to be done. At what point is that next run gonna sprain a muscle, gonna
Yeah,
make you
I
pass
mean,
out, right?
kind of to go along those same terms, I would say if you got an ankle sprain and you're not coming in to do your rehab and your treatments, or you're not taking care of yourself, if you come in and get your ankle taped right before practice, is that really going to be the end all be all to help you get through that practice? I think that's probably I mean, in athletic training, student athlete ways, I mean, that's
Yeah.
how, as that is taping your ankle 10 minutes before practice, or is coming in and kind of rolling out for 3, 4, 5 minutes right before you go to practice after laying around all day. Is that really going to help you get through that practice as well as it should, or should you been taking care of yourself before? So maybe
I
that's
feel like I feel like there's a spotlight and a seat, and you literally knew my entire college athletic experience. Either that, or all athletes are eerily similar, and we don't want
all
to
athletes
admit it
are
until
very,
we're done.
yeah, I would say that they're all very similar in their own special, unique ways.
Yeah, and it's something you learn as you grow and as you go. I mean, my freshman year, I would come in and yeah, I would do the ankle tape and kind of use it as a band-aid. And then my athletic training staff was similar to you. Their advice was, yeah, we'll do it because we don't want you to hurt your ankle even more. But at some point, you gotta strengthen your ankle because you're actually potentially making it weaker, excuse me, by not strengthening. So the older I got, the more experience I got, the more ankle sprains I got, even with tape. I was like, all right, the band aids run its course. To kind of shift back to the mental aspect of that,
Mm-hmm.
what's the mental ankle tape that you think most athletes face, and how can we start to peel back the layers of that tape so that way we might not need to rely on it?
Mental ankle tape. I think the mental ankle tape for an athlete would maybe just even if they're not, just saying kind of like those crutch words like I think I'm okay, or I'm okay, I'm fine, or just those little phrases like that. I think as soon as we just as the mental health field, the athletics field, medicine, just everything, as soon as we start continuing to break that stigma of making sure that kids know that it's okay to not be okay, and as soon as we admit those things, we can start to work towards bettering ourselves. I think that is when real progress will be made. So usually you can tell when somebody's struggling and they just say, oh, I'm okay, I'm fine. And I do it myself. I do it with my coworkers. I do it with my coaches and my athletes and family and friends. I'll tell them that I'm fine and I'm not. But as soon as you can come to that realization that maybe it's okay to not be okay, I think those are the layers that we have to start peeling back to make the progress forward that we need.
Yeah, 100%. I like that a lot. And I think as athletes, whether you're on a team sport or not, it's internalized and it's always okay, either suck it up for the betterment of the team or figure it out for the betterment of the team. Or but it's weird. It's that aspect of I have to do something for everyone else. And I guess we'll stick to team sports because that's where I my brain goes. But I'm sure it's the same for individual and for coaches, honestly. But for a team sport, it's what can I fix so the team does X, Y, and Z, whatever success looks like in your sport. When you start to talk about it from a mental health standpoint, yeah, it's still what can I fix, but it's not always for the team. It's for myself. And that feels ridiculously selfish. And then we become afraid of looking like a selfish teammate, a selfish leader, our performance drop. Again, all these anxieties come up, which are totally valid, right? how can we understand that just on the other side of that fear is the next step towards team success and individual success?
Yeah, I think you just to understand that you just got to take that leap of faith and just go for it, and to get to that other side so you can start making the progress. I mean, like you were saying, it is a very selfish thing to realize, but it's something that I realized very early on in my athletic career, being a wrestler my entire life up until I graduated high school. Wrestling is it can be a very selfish sport because you're out there one on one against somebody, and I think that's what makes wrestling one of the greatest sports that you can work. I'm very biased when it comes to that. I think it's one of the greatest. I think it builds discipline and strength and mental toughness, but it can also do the reverse effect to those. I mean, you're out there by yourself, but it's also a team aspect. So it's kind of where I learned that very early on. Do I want to cut the weight? Do I want to wrestle at a weight that I shouldn't be at, or just different things like that? So I think, like you were going back to your point, what do we need to do to get to the other side? I think you just need to take that leap and to admit that you might not be okay, or you might need help, things like that.
Yeah, I appreciate the honesty. And before we jump into taking that leap, whether it is alone or together with a community, is there a moment? I know you mentioned that you learned it through wrestling. Is there a moment in your career, your wrestling career, that stands out to where you said, "Man, like I was taught mental toughness in this moment," or "Hey, I wasn't okay in this moment, and this is how I moved past."
Man, full transparency. Being from the state of Oklahoma, it's probably one of the bigger wrestling states in the country. But I was very, I would say, average or below average when it came to wrestling. I always considered myself more of a book nerd than an athlete. But I was still out there every single chance I could. One moment that vividly stands out to me, and I will probably never forget it as long as I'm in the world of athletics, is on my senior night in front of all my friends and family and church members that had come to support. And I think that duel was even broadcasted on like the local television channel or something that was there, and they were doing interviews and everything. And I went out there on my senior night and I got stuck, which I mean, I got pinned very quickly by somebody that was a lot better than I was. And I remember getting up and just kind of looking around, just like in shock and awe, like, man, this is the last time I'm going to be in this building wrestling in front of all these people that came in to, I mean, you're an athlete yourself, so you've had a couple senior nights yourself. So just one of those moments, it was like, man, I'm not okay right now. But in a sport like wrestling, where mental health is very stigmatized, and it's you suck it up and you're fine. It's one of those things where you kind of got to like swallow your pride and walk back and shake the guy's hand, jog over, shake the coach's hand, and go back to the bench and cheer on the rest of your teammates. But I think it was I think that's probably one of the most vivid memories that I have of just not being okay, but kind of having to hide it. And then I think it affected me probably the rest of my career, which was only a couple more weeks after that at that point. So, and not really having a support system to talk to other than like family and a couple of close friends. But mental health back then was very, very stigmatized. It's not something that you would talk about, especially in the sport of wrestling.
Yeah, yeah, I can relate on a couple different levels there. But once you understood, okay, I'm not okay, and I still have a couple matches left, right? There's something to be said for in the moment potentially internalizing it so you can get to the end of the sport or the end of the workday or to a moment where your brain can calm down and you can kind of decompress and understand what just happened. But once that initial I'm not okay wears off and you're like, okay, I really am I'm struggling here. You said you had a handful of people that I'll just call your community in your community. Is there ever a moment where you wish you had more people in your community or different people, or were these people like, I'm ride or dying with them, they carried me so hard and I
Man,
appreciate them?
yeah, honestly, I think at the time I had the community around me that I needed, and that
Hmm.
community that I considered my tight knit group at that time is still, I mean, one of the main people that I will always go to for everything is my mom. I'm a huge mama's boy. I'll admit that till the day I die. I'm very thankful for everything she's done for me. I wouldn't be here without the love and support that she's given me. And then some of my best friends are still to this day. One of them will be looking forward to listening to this podcast so they can ridicule me for it. But he was one of my closest friends then. He's one of my closest friends now. my older brother, some of my coaches at the time. I think the community I had around me at that time, I think, was the right people that God put around me for a reason.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And I guess I'm not going to assume here. I'll ask you, had you known now or known then what you know now about mental health, would you have utilized your community differently?
I think I probably, oh, I don't know. That's a really good question. I think being in the sport that I was in and knowing just kind of how it was to, I mean, wrestling is one of the macho sports. I mean, it's one of the OGs and it's a tough sport. I don't know if it was, it's just not the type of sport where you can kind of like outright talk about how you're feeling, which is something that I'm hoping and praying that the stigma continues to be broken down and more athletes are talking about how they feel and their mental health and not being okay. Um, I probably wish I would have, but knowing what I know now, would I've used it then? Honestly, probably not, just because of the stigma and everything behind it.
Yeah, it's a fair, honest answer. I appreciate that. And I think when, I guess now that the world is so interconnected through different social platforms, through a trillion streaming platforms on TV, right? All we see is 2 hour snippet at most of the sport or whatever you're watching, right? Even if it's theater, right? You see the an hour act, intermission, another hour. We don't see the game that's played off the mat, outside the lines, off the pool, whatever your playing surface. It's our hope at Make Mental, just as I know it's yours as an athletic trainer, that people start to understand the game that's played off the playing surface or off the stage. How do we take that step forward collectively as a group? We'll just stick to athletics. How do we let people into that part of our life while still respecting a sense of privacy, right? Because no one's asking anyone to share everything. No one's saying, I need to hear your whole life story. How can we maybe share bits and pieces to let people know they're not alone and we can get through this together? So that day, one day, that wrestler who feels like you did back then now can go to their coach, can go to their teammates and rely on.
Yeah, I think the more, and this is something that Amanda at Hope for Athletes, I'll proudly wear her merch today. Something that her platform always preaches is that we all have
Mm.
a story, and I've even made Instagram posts and TikToks and different social media things talking about it. I think the more that we can share those snippets of our stories that we feel comfortable with sharing, the more that other athletes, the more that other softball players, the more that other volleyball players, just because those are the sports that I work, the more that those kids continue to share their struggles and their day-to-day life, because I see it all of the time on all of social media, just different things that people are doing. And the more that we share those things, the more it just becomes the normalcy, the more that stigma continues to break. And then that one day eventually we'll get to that point where talking about your struggles, talking about not being okay and asking for help, that's when those things will start to become just the norm, and they won't be like, well, I'm scared to go talk to my coach that I'm struggling out of fear of not getting playing time or whatever it may be. So the more, I think the more that we start to talk about our story, share our story, because we do all have one. It's something that I preach to my kids every time they come in with different things and wanting to talk. It's like, it's okay to talk. We all have a story, whether it's the exact same story. It's not. That's what makes each athlete, each athletic trainer, each coach, each admin. It's what makes everybody unique. So that's what I would think.
Yeah, I love that answer. And two things came to mind when I was listening. The first is the fear of playtime is real. It just is. Whether you are talking about mental health, physical health, strategies, whatever it may be, is very real. So if you don't feel like you could go to a coach, an assistant coach, a team captain, whatever, is people at your institution that you can talk to, and the athletic training staff is a fantastic place to start. If your college or university has it, a mental performance coach is a wonderful place to start. There is a point at which what you share with them, they're obligated to report it to someone. But
Yes,
if you just say, hey, Alec, I'm struggling mentally. I don't want to go to coach because I'm afraid of playtime. Can I talk to you for a minute? I don't know of an athletic trainer that would say no, which is a beautiful thing. And as we take steps towards to when I can say, I don't know of a coach that wouldn't say no, that's where you could start. So if you're right there wanting to reach out, if you're at Alec's school, talk to Alec. If you're not, find the staff that will. Someone will know who it is. Secondly, as you were talking, moving on from the fear of playtime, if I can remember here, you said, hold up. See, this is why I edit out, or I could leave it in. Who knows?
Yeah. We all struggle. It's okay. I was kind of talking about how we all have a story, and that's kind of nobody's is the same. That's what makes us kind of
Thank
unique.
you. Thank you. Maybe I will leave this in. Maybe
Yeah,
we'll try that. Just
yeah,
a
it kind of
raw
goes along with the
episode.
theme.
It'll save, in all transparency, it'll save me like 20 hours of work because I can't use editing software. No. But to get back to what this focus is, and I lost it again. God, it's probably because I didn't eat today.
It probably is, yeah.
No, aha. I know. We're talking about imposter syndrome. I couldn't help but think of that, right? We all have a story, but mine's not as quote unquote bad or as gripping or as light, whatever adjective you want to describe. Mine is not them. I'm not them. Their story is more important. More people are gravitating towards their story. What is that all about? Number one, because sometimes I don't even understand. And number two, how do we know that our story is just as valid as the teammate to our left and to our right, whether we think it's heavier or not?
Yeah, man, that's a very heavy question. Full transparency, I really don't know the answer to that, but I can say that especially in the field of athletic training, sports medicine, imposter syndrome is a very real thing that even I struggle with. It's something that I talk about a lot with my office mate Carly. She's the best. She always helps me. It's something that I talk about with a lot of my close mentors. Um, it's something that we all struggle with no matter what job. I mean, you can be an accountant punching numbers and you can think that somebody punches numbers better than you. You can be an athletic trainer and think that, man, I don't know this because I'm very early on in my profession. I'm 6 months, I'm a year, I'm 2 years in. To me, experience doesn't really mean as much. It doesn't have as much stock as people put into it. I think that if you know something, you know it. And then if you don't, then you can um, take those lessons and try to go learn those things that you don't know. With athletes, imposter syndrome is a very real thing. And why would my story as a non-starter mean as much as the star conference player of the year or Heisman winner or whatever it is, whatever sport? Why would my story matter when they're telling their story? That's where I think the more that we continue to talk about mental health and the stigma and the struggles, the more that those things will just become the norm, and those athletes will and they should know that their story does.
Yeah, can we flip the narrative too? Can we switch it and say I am the star player and my story is getting portrayed all over the place. Who am I? Right? Like why am I the one who has to share the story? Why is the spotlight on me? Just because I can swim faster, dribble better, make a basket, right? Like we're all recruited to a college level. Doesn't matter what level you're at because you're good at your sport, right? Why all of a sudden once you get out of high school, and now even high schoolers are experiencing this given the age we're in, why is just because I'm good the spotlight on me outside the lines, off the mat, like I mentioned? That's a very real struggle as well, because then you have to share your story so many times. Then you have to figure out what you want to keep to yourself. Then you have to figure out how you can do it without agitating your teammates, right? And then you start to get this sense of who even am I? When it gets to that point of who even am I, how can we as athletes remember our reasons why we picked up the ball for the first time, why we stepped on the mat?
Yeah, I think that's where, and I think you've even talked about it in some of your previous episodes. That's where being mindful and just taking those, whatever it is, those 5-10 minutes, that hour walk, and just reflecting on who you are and why you do what you do. I've said that so many times to my athletes that I work with. It's when you're struggling and you don't know if you want to continue to play the sport, or you don't know why you're playing this game, or you just need a little bit of like pump up. You just need some juice to get the blood flowing. It's like, why did that 5, 6, 7, 8 year old girl pick up the softball or in the bat for the first time? Why did that 7, 8, 9 year old girl decide to jump and hit a ball over a net for the first time? Like, why did you decide to do those things? That's something that I think everyone, regardless of the sport, should reflect on every now and then. I mean, I have to do it with myself when I'm struggling in the athletic training field, when I'm tired working these long days and I'm gone for 4, 5, 6 days at a time on the road with these teams that become my family because I spend so much time with them. Like, why did I get into athletic training? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Why did you decide to get into podcasting and make a mental health podcast? It's something that I think all of everyone listening can take a few minutes to self reflect and really ask themselves, like, why am I doing this? And I think once you have those answers and you remind yourself, that's where you can start to make a little bit of progress. Because even I've done that. I've like, why am I just worked a 16-hour day and I got to be back up here in 4 hours and I haven't eaten dinner and I'm tired and I have no clean clothes. Like, why am I doing it? Once I kind of remind myself, like, hey, you got in this because you're making an impact more than you think you are. These kids are taking things from you that they will take on for the rest of their lives. And um, you're the reason, you could be the reason that they're out there playing their last games or whatever it is. Like, you're making an impact in whatever field that you're in, whether you're an athlete, non-athlete, whatever it is. I think like you were saying, just take those time, be mindful, reflect over why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah. And I kind of want to turn it to you really quick, if you're okay, because I know you won't turn it on yourself and
Yeah,
make it about you.
definitely will
What
not. I'm not that kind
what
of person, but
what you described was maybe I'm the reason, and when you say I know you mean athletic training staff as a whole, but
yes, yeah,
again, I kind of want to push you in this direction if you're willing. When you say might be the reason someone plays, um, I'm the reason they get healthy a lot of times. But then again, I'm also the reason they may have to sit out because I'm telling them no. Although you're not, it's the injury, but it can feel like that. How do you handle that weight as an individual and then as a collective of the athletic training staff at your institution specific?
yeah. Handling that, especially like on the flip side, where you're holding somebody out when they are possibly playing their last game, or they can be out there helping contribute to a championship run or something similar to that. Wearing that weight is something that can be very heavy, and I think. Something that the staff here at the University of Tulsa does is we always just pour into each other. We all, like, our office doors are, I mean, mine's closed right now because we're recording the podcast. But if it wasn't, my door is always open. I tell my staff members and my coworkers, and I tell my athletes and my coaches and anybody that'll listen that my office is a safe space. Everybody that knows me and knows what I do knows that I am a safe space. I take very good pride in being that for those people. As soon as you walk in from the rubber floor of the training room onto the carpet of my office, whatever happens in the office, obviously I mean, you can't cross lines or anything, but once you step over into my office, this is a safe space. What happens in the office just stays in the office. I want you to feel comfortable talking. And the staff here at the University of Tulsa is good on leaning on each other when we're struggling and when things happen with athletes or with coaching staffs or just with individual lives, just leaning into each other and backing each other where it's going to grab dinner or grab a lunch or to go on a Starbucks run right before you need to go talk to coaches or whatever it is to just kind of like completely reset or relax. I think that's kind of what we do here at the University of Tulsa.
Yeah, I love that. Just being that safe space for the athletes, but as well as for your coworkers, right? And it's going to be reciprocated. Obviously, as you mentioned, within reason. Once there is concern, then you have to take the appropriate steps. Obviously, just in total transparency to the listeners, I don't want them to be like, "Well, you said," but
Yeah,
um,
no, most of us, I mean, I think we're mandatory reporters. If crossing the line,
yeah,
we're
yeah,
obligated to say things. So
yeah. Well, as is a
And
therapist,
yeah,
right, or a
we always have your best
psychologist,
interest
or
at heart too. I mean, if you
correct,
confide in us within a certain limit, I mean, that's obviously going to
yeah.
stay within this.
I always like to just. It's not obviously not black and white. Mental health is just a world of gray. Um, but I always like to say if you give off that you're going to be a harm to yourself or others, that's usually where the line starts, right? As soon as that happens, then you can understand why, right? But to kind of transition to another part of the episode, before we get there, though, I can't help but thinking you mentioned Starbucks a couple times. What's the go-to order? This is like
Oh,
the most
man.
favorite question whenever people bring up coffee.
I'm not gonna lie to you. So right now I'm drinking like this Mary cranberry thing that I've already talked about her. My good friend Carly, we actually just went right before. She's talking to some coaches now, but we went on a Starbucks run. But I'm honestly more of like a Dutch Bros guy. I have to go.
Ah,
Yeah, so shout out Dutch Bros. I'm getting no money for this, but I wish they would sponsor me. More athletic trainers should get NIL deals just like athletes. But
I agree.
Yeah, my go-to is usually any sort of very large-sized Rebel. Doesn't matter the flavor as long as it's not sugar-free. If I'm gonna put some harm in my body, it might as well taste
You're
good
gonna
too.
do it right. You got to
Yeah,
do it right, right?
absolutely. Or
You
Celsius,
can't do
or
anything halfway.
yeah, Alani's or
I
Bubbly.
love that.
I'm good for all of it. I don't
I
really.
love that. It so it sounds like you're if someone said, all right, you can go anywhere in the world for it, you'd go to Dutch Bros, but you're not super picky. You're just like, get
Yeah,
something tall and something sugary in my hand, and I'm good to
yes,
go. I'm good to
yes,
help.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. If I'm gonna
I
sit
love that.
and chat and talk somewhere, I'll go to Starbucks, and or if I'm gonna get a coffee, I'll go to Starbucks. If I want something that's gonna energize me, I'll go to Dutch Bros.
There you go. I I don't want to call out brands on the podcast just in case one day, we all have hopes and dreams, but I am not any of those brands you mentioned. We'll just put it at that. There seems to be one left out that you can use your brain and figure it out. And it's a lot of people run on it, especially in our country. That might give you a big hint. But kind of staying on this topic, I think a lot of people that might be listening to this episode see their athletic trainers at work, or your students specifically see Alec at work. Sounds like the name of a podcast you could do right there. Um, what do you do in your free time to kind of energize in those, besides sleep, in those 4 hours that you kind of hinted at earlier? Do you play video games? Do you sing? Do you dance? What do you do?
I am oddly one of those mid to late 20 males that doesn't play video games. I've honestly never really been into them. So call me crazy if you want. I've never been a video game person. I'm big on like movies and TV shows, and I'll get to the gym when I can because I would never ask my athletes to do something that I can't demonstrate and do myself. I feel like that's not very fair. If I'm asking them to do core exercises or legs or whatever it is, and I can't do it, then I probably shouldn't be asking you to do it to begin with. But getting outside, going for walks, going to the gym. I'm a big movie guy, so going to the movies. I'm a big foodie, so going to grab a bite to eat. Sleeping, catching up on sleep. I'm a big napper, so if I can get a nap in, I'll take a nap. Just relaxing, hanging out with friends, fellowship, things like that.
Yeah, I love that. Is there a, I know you said you consider yourself more of a book nerd. Is there a book that is a must read right now that you can think of?
Oh man, not off the top of my head that I can think of. I'm like
Okay.
more of just like a if somebody recommends like any sort of like I'm not like a I'm gonna go sit down and read like a Harry Potter book or things like that. I'm more
Fair,
like
fair.
a self help kind of guy. So,
Nonfiction
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of
So if
guy.
I can
Well, that
get
makes sense given
yeah,
your line of work. You're not gonna pull out a magic wand and do something, but you're gonna you're gonna take pragmatic, logical steps forward. Uh, Again, kind of sticking on the theme, I like to go in threes. If we're if we're struggling and we don't know what to fill our free time with, especially after our athletic career, because that's a big problem. We're used to having regimented schedules. Where are three places we can start that will, as I like to say, keep us out of trouble?
say after the like after your athletic career is over, what can we do to kind of supplement that regimen? I would say probably the gym is the maybe one of the first places that you can start. That way, I mean, you're used to working out and doing something athletic related every single day anyway, so you might as well keep that healthy lifestyle. Usually working out for me makes me feel a little sense of happiness and gives me a little bit of like confidence and self-worth. So there's a lot that can go into just moving your body, even not even going to the gym, just going for walks and things like that. um, Maybe you're not pursuing any further athletic career, but you've just gotten a very awesome degree, or maybe you didn't and you decided to like medically retire or something. Whatever you're passionate about, find something. In today's day and age, I feel like there's so many different ways that you can go. You can make 1,000 TikToks and try to become social media famous. You can start making Instagram reels. You can try to be a comedian. You can make YouTube videos. I think as long as you're putting good content out there, I think people are willing and usually will listen. So just try to find an avenue or an outlet that you can pour whatever you're passionate about into. So I'm very passionate about athletic training, but I'm also very passionate about student athlete mental health. Being an athletic trainer gives me an avenue to pour into that kind of like that side gig. So being an athlete for you gives you the opportunity to relate to whoever you're having on the podcast and those listening to pour into the Make Mental podcast. So I think just finding something that you're passionate about and that you love, or maybe just trying new things, even if you're graduating and you become a, my kids like to say, becoming a NARP. I'm sure you've heard that term several times, being a NARP and just not really knowing what to do. Try a bunch of different things. Go to the gym, go make a video, go try to cook something, make some coffee. I don't know, go walk some dogs and see if you're good at that. Paint a picture, read a book. There's so many different things that you could do to try to find something that you're passionate about and that you love, especially in today's day and age.
Yeah, I love that. And I like to consider myself as a harp still, a half athletic regular person. I'm still in these adult leagues, right? So there's still ways to fuel your athletic passion, right? The gym, you can join leagues outside. Just know that you might be the best one there for a while, and then one day you wake up and you're no longer the best one, and you're like, "What the heck? People
Yeah,
are
one day
faster than
you'll
me
wake
now."
up and you're like, man, my knee or my back hurts. Where's my
Yeah, just from 40 minutes of an indoor little game. But
yeah,
in all seriousness, it's a scary place to be when your sport just ends. Or again, if you're not an athlete, when what you've been doing for the past 2, 4, 5, 7 years, in your case of school, is done. When you've had pretty much from waking the moment you wake to the moment you go to bed planned, or at least some sense of direction, right? My advice would be similar to yours, is find that passion and fuel it, but understand that the passion will come to you when it's supposed to. It could be the day after you're done. It could be before you're done, right? You could start pouring into what's next chapter in your life before you're done, kind of like I did. But if you don't, there's no time limit, right? Like most of us athletes have been doing our sport since before we can remember. Honestly, that's like some of my first memories are at sports centers, right? All of a sudden that's done. It's like a part of you dies, and it's real. You go through a sad for a long time sometimes. But in that sadness, in that confusion, in that world of gray that I mentioned before, is a beautiful canvas ready for you to paint. And you can paint whatever you want on it. If you mess up, just put some white or black or whatever canvas you're starting on over it again, and go at it again. And you don't have to show your painting to anyone, as I alluded to earlier. You can show a couple of people in your community, as Alec did, or you can start to show more people the beautiful work of art you're working on. And if you're willing, let them in on the mess you've made, on the success you've made over here, like Bob Ross and his happy little trees, right?
yeah, yeah.
How many times did he have to paint in order for him to be able to be that good? To relate it back to sports, how many times did you have to get pinned? How many times did you have to miss a free throw to not hit a personal record in order to hold up something that you were proud of? It just starts over. And yes, that is scary, but think of it this way: you can start over now at 20 something rather than 4 or 5 when you started. And if you have to start over again at 30 when your professional career ends, no one's telling you when you should start or stop. Is there a way, and again, I don't think there's a magic formula, I don't think there's a one size fits all, but in your experiences, is there a way for us to kind of trick our brains to understand that? Because even as I say it, I sit here and I'm like, I'm gonna have to start over tomorrow with something in my life, and I'm
Yeah.
scared. How can we not necessarily trick, how can we prepare or strengthen our brain for that moment of, okay, something new is coming, how do I handle it?
Yeah, I think the best way to do it is just to talk about it. Go for it. I mean, if you're an athlete and you just played fall season is about to be over and athletes are playing their very last games or they're about to, and the winter is going to come and go, and then the spring's going to start and you're not going to have your sport that you've been playing your entire life to do. Talk about that. Talk about, man, I'm not going to have to. I mean, and you can twist it whatever way you want to. You can twist it negatively and say, oh well, what I've done my entire life is over, or you can twist it in more of a positive way and say, oh well, I'm not waking up at 6 a.m. to go do these workouts or 5 a.m. to go do these workouts. It's kind of nice. I'm going to sleep in for the first time in my life, or I don't have to go do these very strict lifts that I've not really enjoyed my entire collegiate career, but I can still go to the gym and do what I want to do. I can go take these yoga classes, or I can go sit in the sauna. I think you can twist it however you want to, but I think just talking about it is the best way to kind of start to realize that it could be. I mean, like you were saying, I mean, there's so many different avenues. You can, that passion and the love that you had for your sport will come, and it will come for something new, and there's no timetable on it. It can come tomorrow, it can come 5 years down the road, but as long as you keep trying new things and you talk about it and you accept it. I think that's a very big one too. Is just accepting that it's over. I think that's a hard thing for athletes to come to terms with sometimes, because you can be sitting, and I've been in those situations where your your athletic career just ended, and you're sitting in the locker room, and you're just kind of like that stunned, like wow feeling. Just as soon as you accept that, man, this probably is over, then you can start to move on and pour into those other avenues that may come along down.
Yeah, you can't get to the next chapter in a book until you finish the one right before it, right?
Exactly. I
And
love
if you jump into the middle of the book, you might get lucky and the chapter might make sense, but why risk it, right? You can use those experiences that are so valuable to the rest of your life that you gained as a student athlete for what's next. Because there is something next, and it is beautiful and it is scary at the same time, but there's 7 billion people on the planet or something crazy like that that you can experience it with, especially in today's day and age with the connectivity that we have. To transition again, maybe to a little bit further outside of college athletics, once you've accepted your career is done. Actually, that's not fair because this is a real fear when you're playing. So I'll rephrase it. I apologize. The mental health around body image is insane.
it.
We
Hmm.
are doing a much better job of lessening the burden, but it's still nowhere, in my opinion, where it needs to be. How do we understand that we are sculpting our bodies in certain ways to perform that it's almost impossible unless you're made out of stone for your body to look like that every single day of the year? And then what's healthy yesterday could not be healthy today. Like it's just such a big topic. I'm curious on even just the introduction of your thoughts on that as an athletic
Oh
trainer.
man, I think even as an athlete myself in the sport of wrestling, body image is
Mm,
something that even to this day I still kind of in a way struggle with, even though it's kind of making me feel old saying it now. But like I'm almost 10 years out of high school. I'm 27 years old now. I'm almost 10 years out of high school and wrestling my entire life. I still struggle with body image stuff. Like, man, I used to be the exact same weight for 7, 8, 9 years of my entire life, and now I'm not at that anymore. And I think working the sports that I work now, body image is a huge thing that athletes struggle with, especially within those sports. The uniforms can be very exposing and can make you feel less than you probably should have. And I hate's a very strong word, but I hate that athletes have to feel that way just because it's a specific uniform. I think the more that athletes continue to speak out and to express their discomfort with different things, then the sport will evolve, and or you will, and then you can kind of just start like protecting yourself more. I don't know if that's the right way to express it, but um, like in the sport of volleyball, they have to wear the volleyball uniforms are like shorts and they're spandex, and I don't really know if that's the most comforting for athletes to deal with. So some of them can wear like long pant leggings, or they can wear pants or things like that. So I think the more that we continue to stand up and to speak out about those things and express our discomfort, the more that those in charge that make those decisions can continue to make those changes to make the athletes more comfortable.
yeah, and I think comfortable is the focus word there, right? If as long as the uniform isn't impeding on a rule, that obviously if it's a rule that you have to wear shorts and you don't, then that's where the change needs to happen, as you alluded to. There's no shying away from that. But like in hockey, you can't say, oh, the helmet makes me uncomfortable, I'm not wearing it. Like there's limits to everything. But your point of, can the athlete be comfortable, is it not impeding on performance or safety?
Yeah,
Those two concerns, performance and
you
safety, if
shouldn't be
those
out
are
there
met.
worrying about your appearance and how many people are
Correct.
looking at you or could be posting things
Correct.
on social media. You should be out there focusing on the next play or
Playing
the
the
next,
sport you love,
next
yeah.
pitch and playing the sport that you love. You shouldn't have to worry about what you look like, because everybody is amazing and beautiful in their own ways. So
Yeah. And I think to get to my point of, maybe this is where I was going, of post college athletics, when body image comes into factor, you're not exercising for 4 hours a day anymore. You're not doing 2 days. You're not needing the same amount of calories. You're just not. And that's a confusing world to exist in, because you either lose weight, you gain a ton of weight. Some people stay the same, but like then it goes back to like, how do you balance that, right? If I, for wrestling, let's just say you were in like the 170 something weight class. Well, you don't need to be that anymore. So you could still have the same eating habits and then move up to closer to the 200, or vice versa. You don't need the calories anymore. So your body's like, all right, I'm already used to cutting weight. Let's just keep cutting, and down you go even more. How do we maintain that healthy balance of, oh, it's okay, it's supposed to happen, like I know what happens, I could be X amount of pounds and it's okay, but then all of a sudden it's an actual health crisis? How can we get that healthy balance of, hey, I'm 10 pounds lighter than I was, it's okay, take a deep breath, or oh my goodness, I'm 50, 60, 70 pounds off of what's considered healthy.
Yeah.
It's a slippery slope.
Yeah, it can be a very slippery slope. And I think to each their own in that aspect of life. If you want to gain 10 pounds, you want to lose 10 pounds, you want to put on 5 pounds of muscle or lose 5 pounds or whatever it is, I think to each their own, whatever you're comfortable with. I think you should be able to feel comfortable in your own skin. But you should also, I mean, I'm in the healthcare profession, so I'm always going to preach being healthy. I think with being healthy comes a certain aspect of being happy as well. And I'm big on joy and being happy. So I think as long as you know and you have that kind of like that athlete mentality to, oh, well, I should be a little bit healthy, then I think you should be fine. But it can be a very slippery slope if you let it get away from yourself. And speaking out, and I think not letting social media dictate what you do is very big too, especially in today's day and age. You see somebody, and I struggle with it myself, you see somebody lifting so much weight, or you see somebody that, like you were saying, looks like they're built out of rock or whatever it is, then you're like, man, I mean, why can I not be like that? I mean, who's to say that you can't? But also comparison is comparison is the thief of joy, I think is how the saying goes. And if it doesn't, then that sounded smart, I guess. So
No, it is. You're correct. You're correct.
never compare yourself to others. And that goes in athlete life, non-athlete life, and whatever you're doing. Just try not to compare yourself to others, because that's when the joy will start to be sucked from.
Yeah, you said comparison is the thief of joy. And I think at another episode, we had someone say compassion is the chief of joy. So that's some food for thought
Love
as
that.
well.
Yeah,
But
love that.
where I always go, or not I always, where I've gone now that I've had so many of these conversations is if you're regularly seeing a mental health care provider, not even mental health care provider, but just a healthcare provider, right? Your family physician, your doctor, and their concern is real about your weight one way or another, then it's time to take some sort of action, right?
Yes.
If they're not concerned that you're 10 pounds this way, 10, and again, 10 is just a number. It's not, don't quote me on the metric if you're listening. If you're X amount heavier or lower and they're not concerned, okay, maybe you can try and lighten the burden on yourself. But if they're showing some concern, genuinely talk to them. And if they're not showing concern and you think there should be, speak up for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just speak up for yourself. The worst they could say is, nope, you're doing fine. And you're doing fine, right? That's what they do for a living. But if you're any bit concerned, there might be something deeper there. So if you have that sense of joy, that sense of compassion that Alec was mentioning, chances are you're where you need to be. But if someone is concerned about you, it's out of love 99% of time.
Yes, 100%. So yes.
That's where I tend to go with that one, because for a while I struggle with that myself. I doom scroll through social media and I'm like, he looks like Dwayne The Rock Johnson. He looks like this football player. He looks like this. And I'm over here looking like Flat Stanley. And I'm like, what's going on, man? Like, I've lost 10 pounds since my sport, right? And then I've put on 8 and then I've lost 10 more. And I'm like, what is going on? Because I've been used to being around 6 foot, 165, 170. That's not the case anymore. But it took that, on my end, it took that courage to say to my doctor, like, hey, are you concerned that I'm now 10 pounds lighter? And he's like, no, dude, like, you don't burn 3,000 calories a day anymore, so you're not eating as much. Like, it's okay. As long as you're eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner, it's okay. And that brings so much peace of mind. So if you're in that, again, I mentioned it so many times, that gray area, there is ways to color it in, right? But it starts with love and self-trust and self-advocacy. And those are 3 things that I know Amanda does at Hope for Athletes, but any mental health, physical health person, that's a place to start. But as we kind of round out this episode, I could sit here and talk to you for days, but I know you have athletes to get back to. I want to ask you 2 things. I'll ask you something, then we'll get into the final question, if that's okay with you. One, I'm going to open the floor to you. Is there anything we haven't talked about that you want your athletes to know in terms of mental health, I guess, that we haven't mentioned?
Obviously, I think I've preached it several times, just knowing that it's okay to not be okay and to speak up for yourself. I think those are 2 very important things. I think, and this is something that I've started to implement this last summer and this fall, is just to have a plan of when you're struggling with those things. I'm big on affirmations and positive self-talk and negative self-talk, like phrases to end that negative self-talk, and breathing techniques. I'm a big believer in all of those, and I have documents that I will pass out to my athletes, and they know that they can come up to me before a big game, and they're kind of maybe feeling some jitters. They can come up to me and say like, "Hey, can we go behind the bench, or can we go to the tunnel, and can we just I just need your help." And that's when we'll go back there, and I'll have them use their whole body, their whole diaphragm, and take big deep breaths in. And usually my go-to is box breathing, and if that works for them, then it works. If it doesn't, we'll try something else. But I'll usually have them breathe, and while they're breathing, I'm preaching affirmations and positive self-talk and kind of hyping them up in their own mind. And I think those things usually will help them kind of calm those jitters down, or get pumped up for a game, or just get rid of that negative self-talk. So I think having some sort of plan or formula or something in place for when you are struggling that you can go to, or having somebody, an outlet or a close-knit community that you can reach out to, I think that is very, very, very important. Yeah, so I think those are my big ones, is just having that plan set in place. And if you don't know where to start, reach out to somebody, reach out to a mental health professional, reach out to, if you're an athlete, reach out to your athletic trainer. 9 times out of 10, I mean, I don't come up with this stuff myself. It's something that I've formulated over my very young career and throughout grad school, of just watching different athletic trainers do certain things, and seeing things on social media, and what works and what doesn't. So you reach out to somebody close to you, reach out to a coach, reach out to a friend, Google it on social media, search it on TikTok. 9 times out of 10, there's whatever you're looking for is out there. You just have to take that step and to do that research to find what helps for you. Don't be afraid to fail. Failure is always going to happen in life. That's a very, very big part of my story as an athletic trainer. It took me 3 times to pass my board certification exam. And I think looking back on it now, I was extremely embarrassed. And I tell the story now is when I learned that I failed for the very first time. I'm watching all of my classmates and people that I've met throughout grad school celebrate, because everybody in the country takes it around the same time. And social media is a very big sucker of joy, and you can see that people are passing their tests, and you didn't. And I remember turning my phone off. My phone was completely off for several days, and looking back on it now, I don't know why I reacted the way I did, but just accepting that failure is going to come eventually. And I think if anything, it'll just make you a better person because of it, because then you're going to have a story to share to somebody. I think I was, in a weird way, supposed to fail that many times, and it's a very normal thing to not pass tests, or to strike out, or to miss a serve, or to hit a ball into the net, things like that. I think the more that we normalize failure and not always being right and not always being the superstar, the more that things will become normal. So being okay with failure, having a plan set in place for when you are struggling mentally, having that close-knit community of people that you can go to, whether it's one person, whether it's 5 or 10 in a group chat, having that community or that person that you can go to, and knowing that it's okay to not be okay. And drink your water. That's a big one for my athletes.
Drink your water. We're going to put that on a shirt. Drink your water. We'll send it over to you. But, I appreciate the advice. And the one thing I will say about social media, and you mentioned it as well, I'll just reiterate it, is do your research, right? There's so many things out there that are so beneficial. But once you think you found one you like, click on the profile, see if they have the appropriate credentials. If they don't, see if they're working towards the appropriate credentials. Just take that extra step, right? I know, and this is the comparison a lot of people make. They're like, well, you don't look what's on a Pop-Tart and you eat a Pop-Tart. I'm like, okay, fair, right? But I've done enough research to know that if I eat a Pop-Tart, I'll be fine, right? Like I'll be fine. In the terms of a mental health world, or in terms of food I've never eaten before, just do the next step of research. And if it's perfect and works, fantastic. If it's not, then you saved yourself from something that maybe you weren't supposed to be doing, and that's worth it to take that extra step.
100%.
So let's move into the last question here on this episode. I'm always saddened by having to ask this question because it means the conversation's over, but I'm always excited to hear the response. So Alec, are you ready for the final question on this episode of the Make Mental
Oh
podcast?
boy, Caleb, I sure hope I am. Let's get to it.
All right, buckle in. It's big and scary now. Okay, so if there is one person in the entire world that you know right now needs a hug from you, who would you give it to and why?
Oh man. I mean, like I said, I think I said at the very beginning of the show, I'd probably go give a hug to my mom. She always gives the best hugs. I'm a mama's boy. I'd go give her a hug because I know she's going to give me a big one right back. And she also works in the healthcare field. So If I had to take a guess, she's probably struggling with something just like the rest of us in the health field are. So I'd probably just go give one to my mom.
Love that. I love that. And again, so many episodes. I don't think we've ever had a mom hug before. I
Yeah.
think we've had family members and we've had group hugs, but I don't think anyone specifically give it their mom a hug. So it's meant to be. And I'm sure she'll listen to this episode and she'll feel it.
She's probably
So,
boohooing and crying as I'm saying that right now.
as a mom should,
As
as
a
a
mom
mom
should.
should. But
Has anybody ever flipped the question on you, Caleb? Caleb, who would you give a hug to?
geez, I
Oh,
don't know, man. I think it'd be my girlfriend at the
yeah.
moment. And that might sound
Probably
like an scapegoat answer, but I actually genuinely mean it. I mean, I'm blessed enough where we can live together and I give her a hug every day, but she's going to school full time in the healthcare field, but on the veterinary side. We have an animal ourselves. We have a pet dog who's actually been very quiet this episode. I'm impressed.
Yeah.
And she's been going to school full time. If I didn't say that, work, school, caretaking for our pet, and still showing up for me. So that's a lot. It's a lot to ask anyone. So I would give her a hug in that respect and just let her know that I'm
I love
proud of
that.
her.
If you're listening
She
to
took her
this,
last final today,
yeah,
so
yeah.
she's
Well,
done with
that's
that.
for her. I know that's a very big weight lifted off her shoulders. She needs to go get herself a nice sweet treat or something to celebrate. I like that.
Well, I might have one prepared, but well, by the time she hears this,
Yeah.
if I don't, crap, I stuck my foot in my mouth. Now I need to do something.
Now you have to do something. I love that question. If you're listening to this, whether you're one of my coaches or my athletes or family or friends, go give somebody a hug. Tell them you love them.
Or send them a text, right? If they're not within hugging distance, and ask for permission first. Don't just creepishly hug them. That
Yeah.
doesn't go well all the time. Just say, hey,
yeah.
for one reason or another, I was compelled to give you a hug. Do you need one? Send them a text. Hey, I've been thinking about you. Hope you're doing well. What's new? It's that simple. And if you
tell
can
somebody you love them, because life's too short. You never know when the last time could be. So go tell somebody you love them.
And we're going to end it there. We're just going to leave that as one of the last lines. But we really appreciate your time and all your nuggets of wisdom there. You're making me want Starbucks or Dutch Brothers or Dunkin' or something. But I got to go get some water myself. And I'm so excited to see all the joy and the good that this episode does for our community, for your community, and for whoever needs to hear it. So thank you so much. And as always, Alec, just like you, the rest of the listening or the rest of our community, you're beautiful and you're worth it.
Thank you.